From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has won the general election, securing another 5-year term. According to the Election Commission, Modi's Bharatiya Janata Party is on course to taking 300 of the 543 seats in parliament. Over 600 million people voted in the marathon election, which took 6 weeks to complete.
People voted for the country and voted positively. For the first time, the country voted to bring someone back. This is a very important verdict because people voted for enhanced leadership, decision-making leadership, and most of all, strong leadership. They voted for national security and development. This is the victory from everyone's support and everyone's development.
And Prime Minister Modi took to Twitter to express his happiness over his massive election victory. Modi wrote, "Together we grow, together we prosper, together we will build a strong and inclusive India. India wins yet again." He ended with his tweet with the hashtag Vijayi Bharati, his election campaign slogan, which means victory and development on all fronts. And his supporters are celebrating the victory outside the party headquarters in New Delhi with singing and dancing. People also celebrated in Mumbai, Bangalore and Assam, among other cities. This election victory is historic in India as the result surpasses the 2014 election when Modi swept to power with about 280 seats.
Doing a more good job. He already done such a wonderful job. We are expecting India should be like a superpower country in the world right now, and we will getting more jobs and everything. We expect at least 2 more tenures from Modi government so that this country would be in top 3 of the world. That's it.
The U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee has approved new bipartisan legislation aimed at toppling the government of Venezuela. Our correspondent Alina Duarte has the details.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Nos encontramos aquí en el Senado de los Estados Unidos, donde
the so-called Verdad Law is a proposal being pushed by Senators Marco Rubio and Bob Menendez. With this law, the lawmakers are calling on the Senate to fully back Juan Guaido and for the Venezuelan National Assembly to be recognized and regain all of its legislative powers, as well as to supposedly negotiate a solution to the political situation in Venezuela. The law also includes so-called humanitarian aid, with an offer of $200 million for Venezuela and its neighboring countries. They also asked that the State Department create a donors group inside of the UN Security Council to coordinate international funds. And on top of all of this, they want to make sure that the humanitarian aid they will supposedly provide will not be sanctioned. But this entire proposal is highly hypocritical, as we know that the Trump administration is preparing heavy sanctions on Venezuelan public workers who are a part of the government-backed food program known as CLAP, which provides free monthly supplies to millions of families as well as other services. This Verdad Law also includes a section to supposedly restore democracy in Venezuela. This section calls for a special envoy to be named and a work group to be formed with the support of the Lima Group and of OAS Secretary General Luis Almagro. Finally, the law also includes plans to work with international organizations such as the International Monetary Fund and multilateral banks for what they call the reconstruction of Venezuela's economy and the restoration of the rule of law. This while at the same time asking for more sanctions against the country's cryptocurrency and to guarantee continued sanctions against democratically elected government.
That was Alina Duarte from Washington. Venezuela's President Nicolás Maduro will destine more than $4 million to the cocoa industry. President Maduro made the announcement via Twitter. He said the Bolivarian Republic plans to export 50,000 kilos of cocoa as the country moves to redefine its economy in light of economic sanctions. Maduro said this is an important milestone and a step towards sustainable growth to guarantee economic prosperity. Maduro also said the 2019 winter harvest plan has started in the state of Guarico with the delivery of financing and agro inputs to more than 2,000 farmers. This will help in the production of over 100,000 hectares of corn, sorghum and rice. More than 2,000 students are taking part in the 18th edition of the Latin American and Caribbean Student Congress taking place in Venezuela. The focus this year will be discussions about foreign intervention and the reality of Venezuela, opposed to a narrative spread by media.
This is a Congress which brings together students from all across Latin America and the Caribbean. The 18th edition of the Latin American and Caribbean Student Congress was born in Havana in 1966. In its 2019 edition, the International Forum will allow participants to discover the reality of Venezuela, as opposed to the falsehoods spread by the mainstream media.
Haiti and Venezuela are linked historically. We have always supported one another. Haitians strongly support the Venezuelan people, their sovereignty and ongoing fight.
Like any other year, the event looks to encourage a discussion on regional topics and challenges, as well as the role of student movements from Latin America and the Caribbean. As part of the discussion, participants expand their understanding of achievements made in the protection of education by the Venezuelan government, despite an illegal economic blockade by the United States.
We identify with the Bolivarian Revolution. In Nicaragua, they tried to carry out a coup d'etat last year, but we Nicaraguans were able to defend our country and our model of free education and health. In Venezuela, they have the same model. These systems are not approved by the U.S.
Colombian students were also present in this event. During this 18th edition of the CLAI, students came to a consensus on the urgency to stop attacks by the U.S. government against Venezuela.
We are the sons and daughters of Bolívar. We are children of the great nation. We are here to talk about education and to send a message to the entire continent to stop this aggression the Venezuelan people are suffering under.
The international delegations will participate in a series of activities until May 25th, with a goal of coming to a robust understanding of the reality in Venezuela as learned through people-to-people exchanges, both with other foreign delegations and through the Venezuelan people themselves.
A 10-year-old girl from El Salvador died in U.S. custody last year after being detained by Border Patrol. The girl's death was not previously reported and brings the number of similar cases to 6. The U.S. Department of Health said the child was medically fragile and had a history of congenital heart defects. She passed away on September 29 from a fever and a respiratory illness at a hospital in Omaha, Nebraska. And the family of a 16-year-old Guatemalan teen who died in U.S. Border Patrol custody are waiting for his body to be returned. Carlos Hernandez was detained by U.S. border agents on May 13th after crossing the border. A few days later, he was diagnosed with the flu and died on Monday. His family is asking for an investigation into his death.
There is no information to know how he died. That is what I want to know. And so what I'm fighting for is for them to send me the body as soon as possible. Because why do they want to have him there? Why do they want him? Because they didn't care of him.
More stories coming up. Don't go away. Welcome back. Police and security forces in Brazil have protested in front of Congress. They want changes to the pension reform proposal, which they say puts them in a place of uncertainty and insecurity.
National security workers in Brazil gathered outside the country's National Congress, calling for modifications to their pension reform proposal. According to the police labor union, the current proposal does not afford them any peace of mind.
This mass public outcry is against the pension reform plan that was drafted in camera. In its current state, the plan discriminates against police officers. It takes away their right to get a pension due to high-risk activities. If a police officer dies while on duty and their spouse is under the age of 44, their partner will not receive a pension. In the case of municipal guards, who I'm representing, their retirement age increases to 65 years old, but it's impossible for a police officer to work past the age of 55.
The protest follows Jair Bolsonaro's government's refusal to amend several points which negatively affect police. This includes failing to differentiate between the retirement age for men and women and the pension plan for families following death while on duty or as a consequence of being at service.
Our logic is simple. How does a person that carries equipment, some of which are dangerous, and deals with the day-to-day stress of being a police officer, do so until the age of 65? We are not asking for any privilege. All we want is what we deserve. This includes adding civil guards to the plan for the national security forces.
Brazil elected a federal government based on its promise to prioritize national security. In practice, they have not yet promoted any policies regarding these concerns. In fact, contrary to their campaign promises, they have developed a pension reform proposal that damages workers in general, but specifically workers in the national security forces. Their life expectancy is a lot less when compared to other workers.
Official sources revealed that on Thursday, Congress will publicly debate the pension reform proposal and the role of police officers and teachers.
Uruguay's largest workers' union announced a partial strike on Wednesday to support workers in the natural gas sector in their struggle against Brazilian oil giant Petrobras. The strike was announced after workers reached a standstill in negotiations with Petrobras and after the company confirmed their plans to pull out all operations from Uruguay, which will lead to mass layoffs. Workers affected have been on hunger strike for over 20 days. Unions have confirmed that their strike will be ongoing as negotiations continue. Our correspondent in Uruguay, Mateo Grille, has more.
Thousands of people have joined the protests taking place in the city center of Montevideo, which is part of the national strike by labor unions against the gas company Petrobras. Gas workers have also been on a hunger strike for 23 days. Petrobras has not replied to the workers' demands, which include no more layoffs and new negotiations after the company announced that it is leaving the country. Labor unions came to the capital to demand a meeting with the president, Tabaré Vázquez, and to give him a document asking the government to intervene in the process in order to minimize the consequences of the company leaving the country. The workers also want to discuss a way that they can keep their jobs. The president has not responded to workers' demands. This conflict between workers and Petrobras has been going on for several months, and it got more tense in the last weeks after the company announced plans to fire 50 workers, or 1/3 of the entire staff.
That was Mateo Grille from Montevideo. Students have clashed with police in Honduras during a protest against President Juan Orlando Hernández near Congress. Dozens of demonstrators demanded lawmakers to annul at least 11 decrees aimed at privatizing the health and education sectors. They joined teachers and doctors who have been staging a strike for over 2 weeks. Police tried to disperse the protesters with tear gas. Organizers say they will continue demonstrating on Thursday across the country. Retired workers and teachers in Ecuador have marched to protest against harsh labor reforms by the government of Lenín Moreno. Several thousand retired workers marched through the center of Quito to the presidential palace. They rejected the measures imposed by the IMF, and the protest was part of a mounting wave of discontent among workers over the government's economic policies.
We are here, the public workers, to report that we are not being paid, despite everything they told us, saying they will pay us in May, June, July, but they actually have not paid us. They have lied to us. I have colleagues who are 70 years old, and they haven't got paid either.
Workers of Argentina's public television station are condemning what they say is censorship and political persecution by the government of Mauricio Macri and by the president of the Argentinian Journalism Forum. We have the details in this report.
Se convierta en un vocero del gobierno.
In a statement distributed on social media, public television workers reject the censorship they have suffered since President Mauricio Macri took office.
Yesterday, we suffered an attack on our freedom of speech. 3 co-workers were sanctioned, and a legal process was started against them for referring to the political situation in Venezuela as a coup attempt, which is nothing less than the truth, and for calling Juan Guaidó a self-proclaimed president. On top of this, on Saturday, we were the only outlet in the country that did not cover the news of Alberto Fernández running for president.
Agustín Lecky, a delegate of the Buenos Aires Press Union, also condemned the double standard in the work of the Secretary of Public Media, Hernán Lombardi.
They allow journalists who came in with this government to talk about the supposed tyranny that exists in Venezuela, about the dictator Maduro, but at the same time, they want to sanction those who condemn a clear coup attempt and call Guaidó a self-proclaimed president who was not elected by the Venezuelan people. We do not deal in subjective opinions. We want to inform, and why we denounce that the public television is disappearing from the media map. They are giving away everything to private media. This is the role that this government came to fulfill.
Through a communique, the union warns about other irregularities in the administration of the Cambiemos party, which violate labor laws.
Months before presidential elections, the management of the TVP newscast under Néstor Slaucero decided to incorporate political supervisors to the different emissions of the newscast to carry out tasks similar to those carried out by bosses, but without the required public competition as established by law. They have lower wage, empty out relevant content from our weekly newscast, cancel weekend shows, on top of other violations of the labor laws.
Journalists are being widely persecuted. Ever since the civilian military dictatorship, we haven't seen any sanctions or layoffs due to reasons that threaten freedom of speech.
For press workers, the situation was further aggravated when a news manager fired long-tenured journalists who had been running news programs for many years, showing that no employee is safe.
The Mexican government will auction almost 70 luxury cars as part of a program that will give the money to social progress. 42 of these cars were seized from criminal gangs. According to President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, the collected funds will be given to 2 municipalities of Oaxaca state, which are the poorest areas in the country. The Mexican dancer Elisa Carrillo has become the first Mexican woman to win the highest prize in classical dance. Carrillo is the main ballerina of the Berlin Ballet, and she has won the Benoit de la Danse. She won the award due to her role in the classic Romeo and Juliet play in the Bolshoi Theater in Moscow. The inaugural edition of the Festival of Latin American Women in Arts took place in London with an estimated 2,000 people attending. Our correspondent Pablo Navarrete has the story.
On Sunday in London, the first edition of Flower, the Festival of Latin American Women in the Arts, came to a close. This new festival was set up to provide a new exhibition space for Latin American women in the field of music, film, literature and art. Over 4 days, this new event on the cultural circuit shone a light on Latina culture in London, a city of more than 8 million inhabitants where it is estimated that more than 113,000 Latin Americans live.
Lo que queremos es crear nuevos espacios para la diáspora latinoamericana en Londres y quizás en el Reino Unido y mostrar, salir un poco de los estereotipos en los que siempre nos han estado encasillados. Entonces es eso, crear nuevos espacios también.
46 Latin American women artists took part in the festival, with most of them living in London. However, Flower also had 3 international artists from Brazil, Cuba and Venezuela. At the festival's opening event at the Rich Mix Cultural Centre located in East London, there was a literary workshop and a music concert headlined by Caramba, a group based in Barcelona but comprised of several Latin American women. The London-based Bolivian musician Paxi Coca from the Andean group Locandes also performed a special show at the festival.
Todo evento que esté con el fin de resaltar, de visibilizar las artes, sobre todo de las mujeres, es muy importante. Yo creo que es un tiempo en el que el lado femenino está saliendo a flote y yo creo que es muy importante. Es la primera versión del festival.
During the 4 days of the festival, an estimated 2,000 people attended the 16 events put on by Flower. It is now hoped that the festival will return next year, so that Londoners can once again be offered a chance to savour the talent of Latin American women. Pablo Navarrete, Telesur, London.
We're taking one last break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Malawi's Electoral Commission has called upon stakeholders to refrain from announcing premature results. The Commission pledges to start official declaration of results as soon as 20% of the votes have been tallied. Citizens went to the polls on Tuesday, casting their votes to elect a president, members of parliament, and local government councillors.
I also wish to again urge Malawians to exercise caution with unofficial results. While some results reflect how people have voted and help shape the expectations, some are outright falsehood, which can incite violence.
South Africa's deputy president will not be sworn in until he gets clear of corruption allegations. David Mabuza has been accused of corruption and is under investigation by the African National Congress Integrity Commission. If he's not cleared, the president will have to appoint another deputy when he announces his cabinet in the next few days. In Gabon, President Ali Bongo has sacked his vice president and forestry ministry amid a timber smuggling scandal. No reason was given for their dismissal, but it comes after 300 containers of Kevasingo wood, which is illegal to export, was discovered at a port. There has been a high demand for the wood in Asia, where it is used to make furniture. Nearly 2/3 of Gabon is covered in forests, and the timber industry is important for the country's economy. At least 2 people have been killed and several others injured in a bomb attack in Somalia. The car bomb exploded near a checkpoint in Mogadishu. Al-Shabaab claimed responsibility for the blast, which targeted a convoy escorting officials and lawmakers to the presidential palace. Casualties include members of the security forces. At least 12 civilians have died after airstrikes hit a market in Idlib province in Syria. The attack was reportedly carried out by the rebel group National Liberation Front. The fresh fighting has taken the death toll to 52. Strikes came as heavy clashes raged in the north of Hama province after jihadists launched a counterattack on Tuesday against government forces. About 180,000 people have been displaced by recent attacks in northwest Syria. British Prime Minister Theresa May's newly proposed Brexit deal has been dismissed by members of her own party and the opposition. May had hoped that her offer of a second referendum would help her finally pass the 3-time rejected Brexit deal through Parliament. However, it has been rejected by pro-Brexiteers in the Conservative Party as well as the opposition Labour Party, which has proposed its own negotiating priorities. These include access to the single market and a customs union, neither of which feature in May's plan.
The question is how we do that. The withdrawal agreement bill gives the appears to have been sunk even before its publication. The Prime Minister must know that the only way now to break the deadlock, which, as today's terrible news at British Steel shows, is damaging our economy, is to put the choice back to the British people.
Absolutely right.
So can I urge her at this 11th hour to take that one final step, to change her mind and to say that she will support a confirmatory referendum?
And the latest blow against May was the resignation of the leader of the Commons, Andrea Leadsom, who had served as the government's main representative to Parliament from June 11, 2017.
Because, you know, I have been supporting Brexit totally for the last 3 years, and I just couldn't, as leader of the Commons with responsibility for the legislation, stand up at business questions tomorrow and announce a bill that I just think has elements I cannot support that aren't Brexit.
But you've held out for so long, so why to this point?
I have been determined to deliver Brexit, and I'm just worried that this bill, with its new elements in it, would not do that. It's been a really tough day.
Should the Prime Minister go now? Should the Prime Minister go?
Thanks very much.
Should the PM go, Andrea?
With that, we end our news brief, but remember, you can find all of these stories by checking our website, telesurenglish.net. And you can also join us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.